Hello my creative friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to paint an autumn landscape, which many of you requested on Instagram. So let's get started. I have my sheet of paper, which is a bit smaller than A4, and I will tape it to my board using paper tape. I'll place the paper tape below my board so that my paper is at an angle. This will help the water and colors flow down instead of forming puddles on my paper. Now let's prepare the sketch. I draw the line for the water. I place it just below the middle of my paper. And next let's draw the land on which our little cabin will stand. So just a wavy line that is more or less parallel to the water. And now the cabin. It should be more or less in the middle of the painting. So draw the central line. And then a line that goes across. And now two vertical lines like that. Actually, let's make it a bit wider. Now let's connect those to the central line. Adding some volume to that roof. And now let's add the windows. There's one small window here. And a bigger one here. Okay, let's mark very lightly where the mountain and the colorful trees will be. And now we need to repeat the same for the reflection. Very roughly. And that's it. We are ready with the sketch. I'll remove any excess lines with my eraser. And it's time to start painting. Let me just set up my space here. So here I have my 2 jars of water and my towel. I will also place my ceramic palette here so that you can see it. That's my brush. I'll also use this larger one to wet the entire sheet of paper. So I take my time. I'm going back and forth multiple times, making sure that my paper is very well and evenly moistened. And while the water is soaking in, I will show you my color palette. It's very large, so I won't be able to fit it into the frame, but I'll be mentioning the colors I'm using, so don't worry. For this painting, I'll use the following colors: Aureolin, Alizarin, transparent orange, maybe some rose sienna, burnt sienna, green, cobalt blue, and Payne gray. Don't worry if you don't have all the colors, just use whatever you have available. I go once again with my brush and some clean water over the paper. And now I'll wipe the water from the house area, because I want that to stay white for now. For such a small area, I find it easier than wetting the paper by going around it, but you can use whichever method is easier for you. Now I take some Payne gray. You can use indigo too. I use Payne gray by Jackson's, which is quite bluish. I'll use it to paint the sky. I add a few strokes and then I wash my brush and I'll drag that color down. I spread it across the area of the sky. We want it to be quite light. Now let's repeat the same for the reflection. Next, let's paint the ground. I'm taking some raw sienna. I add some alizarin to it. And with that mix, I will cover the stripe that represents the ground. I'm painting the reflection at the same time because they're connected. We'll use a darker color to separate them later, but for now, a single stripe will do. Now I mix some Payne gray and some green, and I'll use that to paint the mountain in the distance. Repeating the same for the reflection. Now let's add more definition to it. I'm taking some pure Payne gray from my palette and I'll add a few strokes with it. And once again, we repeat the same for the reflections. Now let's paint the foliage. I take some transparent orange, I prepare a puddle here on my palette. But before I use it, I will take some yellow and I'll paint the most distant trees. The sky is still wet, so I get this nice soft edge. If your sky has started to dry, you might want to leave it to dry completely and then rewet it again. Now I take the orange and with the same brush strokes, I add another row of colorful trees. Let's quickly add those colors to the reflections too. And let's add even more contrast to that by adding some burnt sienna too. Below the trees we need a darker color, so I mix alizarin and green and I get this brown. Now I add alizarin to whatever is left here on my palette and I'll add the foliage on the other side. Here my paper has started to dry, so let's quickly add the color to the reflections too. And some brown, same as we did on the other side. You can make your reflections smoother by using such a big and soft brush to blend the colors a bit. If you don't have such a brush, just use your biggest and softest brush, but it needs to be dry. Let's now finish the foliage in the upper part. Since my paper has started to dry, I'll add lots of spots and will make the edge irregular. Mixing some brown again, I'm using alizarin and green and now I'll add some volume to these trees. Let's now add the tree trunks. I use very thick brown and just the tip of my brush. Now I see that I forgot to add the orange tree in the reflections too, so I'll carefully do that now. Blending the reflections again. Some dark spots here and there. More color here for the foliage. And now let's leave it to dry and we'll come back to paint the cabin. Now my painting is dry and I'll work on the cabin. First now softening the hard edges with a damp brush. And next I take some watery turquoise blue and I'll cover the house, but I'll avoid the windows. Now we need to add the same color in the reflections, but we want it to be blurry, so we need to white the area of the water again. I'm using a soft brush in clean water and I carefully white the area. Now let's add the color. I take some Payne spray and I'll add a few darker spots with it. For example, the windows and the roof. I'm mixing alizarin in green again to get a thick brown mixture, and I'll use it to add a few spots along the waterline. This will create the separation between the water and the ground that we talked about. I'll smudge them with my brush. I will use the same brown mixture to add the shadow here. Now I'm mixing a watery brown mixture and I'll use it to add some texture to the ground. I wipe the excess on my towel and I'll use the dry brush effect. I'm just adding some tiny spots. Now I'll add some darker spots with the thicker mixture. This will make it more interesting. You can also use another color, for example orange or burnt sienna. And if some of the spots are too pronounced, you can use a clean down brush to smudge them. I'll smudge this shadow below the house too by dragging some of that color up. Let's now leave it to dry. Okay, now we'll add some definition to the cabin. I'm taking some Payne's gray and I'll define the roof by adding the shadow below it. I'll use the same color to color the window, but notice that I'm leaving a thin white border. You can use a smaller brush for that, one with a sharper tip to make sure you'll be able to leave the white border. And if not, don't worry, you can add it by using white gouache later. Now let's add some horizontal lines, emphasizing the wooden planks that form the front side of the cabin. Some final touches with Payne's gray. I'm going back to the Cobalt blue and I'll cover the roof with it. And then I'll add some lines with it too. We can even add a chimney. Now I'm noticing that these sides need to be a bit wider, so I'll try to fix it by using turquoise blue again. Now let's finish the windows by emphasizing the white border. I'm not using thick paint because it will stand out too much. I'm adding some on the roof. And here as well. At this point my painting is ready. I can leave it like this, but let me show you how you can make it more interesting by adding some contrast. First, let's make those tree trunks on the right more visible. I'm mixing brown again and I'll go over the lines I painted earlier. We can use the same brown to add some birds. I'm just painting through thin and short lines. And finally, let's make it more realistic. The reflections should be a bit darker, so I'll use my large brush and watery brown mixture, and I'll just cover the entire area of the water again. I'm wiping this area because I want it to stay light. Now I'm mixing some watery Payne's gray and green, and I'll use that color to make this area a bit colder and darker. This will create the illusion of a deep forest. I'm adding the color and then I blend it with the rest. You can get rid of the hard edge by dabbing it with a paper towel, but I lifted some of the color, so now I will have to cover this area again. I lost the darkness of the tree trunks now, so I will add it again. I don't like how this turned out, so I'm trying to fix it with my napkin. But it's not working, so I'll just go over it once more. I use some diluted burnt sienna. And I'm blending it with a clean down brush. So these last few touches were completely optional. You don't need to repeat them. I just wanted to show you a few ways to correct your paintings once they're almost complete. And that's it. here's our peaceful autumn landscape. I hope you enjoyed painting with me today. If you want more in-depth classes, you can join me on Skillshare. It's my favorite platform for both teaching and learning, and I regularly upload new classes there. You can find the link for a 1-month free trial in the description box. You can also find me on Instagram, where I share the projects I'm working on, behind the scenes, and much more. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!